Hey guys, welcome to Cultivating Cadence. I'm Candace. If this sounds familiar to you, I am not good enough to be here. I don't know what I'm doing. I am not as good as so and so. I feel like a complete imposter. This is the video and the podcast for you. If you don't know, I am a mental health coach, previously licensed marriage and family therapist until I moved. It was a whole thing. And I do mental health coaching and mental wellness coaching for millennial women, especially moms and female creatives. And today we're talking about imposter syndrome. This has been kind of playing in my mind for a little while. And it's really funny because I'm actually having imposter syndrome right now talking to this camera because I'm trying to use my back camera, which is supposed to look better. And I'm trying to use my headphone microphone, which is probably causing all sorts of crazy things because I am not a content creator. I'm not a podcaster, but this is the next step of where I wanted to go to expand my message. So if you're feeling like an imposter, you're not alone. But today we're going to talk about imposter syndrome and really how that could be impacting us, but also how we can kind of start to defeat it, how we can push that out and it's not around anymore. Okay. So, it is a pretty prevalent thing. A statistic I look for, my notes are over here. So if you see me looking over here, it's my notes. But a statistic I was looking at said something like up to 70% of people have experienced feeling this at work. And there's an article by the BBC that talks about this. I will link it below. But it talks about the tie between imposter syndrome and burnout, which is really something that's important to me and that I am so passionate about. Is the imposter syndrome burnout thing, which I coach a lot of my clients through. And so it's this persistent belief that we are a fraud in our field. This can be for anybody. This can be for professionals. This can be for moms. This can be for creatives. And again, I work mostly with moms and female creatives in running their businesses and stuff. So this could be even people that are like, my artwork is not as good as someone else's. Or for people like me, I'm also an author. My books aren't as good as so-and-so's. Or so-and-so and I started at the same time and they are selling so many more books than me. Or, my critique partner just gave me this feedback and it just feels so heavy and I'm not good at this and I need to quit or whatever. And this is all despite evidence to the contrary. So evidence to the contrary that we know what we're doing, that we have evidence that we are good at what we're doing, that we belong in this field. And believe it or not, this happens to your doctors, to your therapists, to your teachers. This happens across all fields. And it can be really closely tied to burnout. Like I said, the article by the BBC talks about the tie between imposter syndrome and burnout. And here's the thing. When we are burnt out, we're feeling overwhelmed. We're feeling unmotivated. We're feeling like we can't go forward. We're feeling like it's too much. That really can tie into imposter syndrome or vice versa. And we get this cynicism about what we're doing, right? So let's talk today a little bit about, we've kind of discussed understanding imposter syndrome. And I want to talk about how it can come about in our lives, like how it plays out. And imposter syndrome and burnout can both play out in us withdrawing from what we're doing or passing off tasks to someone else because we feel like we're not going to be able to accomplish them. However, with imposter syndrome, it also looks like taking on more than we need to and overproducing because we fear of being judged. We fear someone's going to come along and say, oh, you don't belong here. You're not good at this. You don't know what you're doing. Stop that. And so we overproduce, we overextend ourselves. And that will eventually lead to the burnout and the withdrawal of like, I can't do this. I don't belong here. It's that having to keep proving ourselves, right? And this is how those two kind of overlap. And I have a project coming up where I'm going to talk about burnout a lot and burnout recovery. And a section of it is going to be about imposter syndrome. And it's so important to me to have that connection be explored, because for a lot of the women I work with, we just want to be good wives, be good moms, be good partners. Sorry, my camera is being funky. Okay. Um, oh, geez, Louise, this tripod is not the best. Okay. Hopefully that didn't affect things too much. I'll just have to keep an eye on it. We want to do the best we can for ourselves and our families. And when we feel impostery, we take away from our ability to do that. We take away from our ability to put our best foot forward. So, what do we do about it, right? Like, and this doesn't just happen in our workplace. This happens for us as moms. So I am also a mom of two young kids at home. And believe me when I tell you, I thought my education would make me a much better mother than I am. That's not to say I'm a bad mom. It's just to say that motherhood can be difficult and challenging, and learning to break habits and break generational ideas of parenting can be difficult, even for those of us that have been trained. Now, I'm not a child therapist, but I do have training in child development, and I worked with families, lots of families, because most of my work was with kids and families. But it doesn't always translate. And so we get to this place where we're thinking, oh, I knew I was going to break cycles. I was going to do this. I was going to do that. And then our kids can't go to bed. We're all tired, and everybody loses their minds, right? Everybody loses it. So this happens for mothers too, where we get, I'm not good enough to do this. I can't be as good as the other moms on social media. I can't hold it together like they can. And then we feel the burnout too. All of us face the burnout. We're exhausted. We're overwhelmed. There's so much going on around us, and we're just trying to find our place in the midst of it all, right? So this doesn't just affect us in our work lives. This affects us at home in our families. And that's not to say that people who aren't moms don't get that too, because believe me, from reading comment sections all over the internet, they do. Because this world is a hard world to live in sometimes. There's bills to pay. You have to take care of your pets. You have to take care of your social engagements, right? So that burnout can come whether you're married, single, with kids, without kids. It doesn't matter. And then we find ways to deal with it, right? We find people to reach out to. I recently started seeing a new therapist because I realized I can't continue this pattern, and I can't break it on my own. Even with my own training, even being a licensed therapist myself, when I was previously licensed, it hasn't transferred to my new state yet. We're working on it, but I have the training. I got my master's degree. I was a therapist. I've done this with people. I coach people in this. I'm a certified coach. We can't do it alone. So finding someone to partner with you in that can be so important, finding that support. And so I was like, I can't break this pattern on my own. I need to go back to someone. I need my own therapist now, right? So some ways that we cope with this, like I said, are seeking out counseling, coaching, mentorship, finding someone who can walk that with us, which is what I do, and I love it. I love partnering with women on recovering from burnout, overcoming imposter syndrome, dealing with their functional anxiety, and creating lives that they're absolutely in love with, creating lives that they just enjoy, and then having that maintenance piece when these things kind of crop up again and we just say, nope, I learned how to do this, and if I can't do it in the season, I'm going to go back and find someone who can help me, which is what I'm doing right now. The other thing is getting a community around you. One of the things I'm focusing on this year for myself is being actively in the pursuit of community. We moved here about 3 years ago, and I have not been intentional about rebuilding a community around me. And it's been really isolating and lonely, and I would never advocate that for my clients, ever. A lot of my connections, even in this area, have been virtual, have been online, and I am making an intentional choice to bring them off of line this year into the real world of connecting with people in my community, in my area, and in our greater vicinity. So finding a community. And if you're a mom, it's good to find a community of other mothers who kind of know what we're going through, know what we're doing. Finding artists like yourself, if you're creative, find other writers, find other painters or people who engage in the same crafts as you. Join meetups and things like that. But find community and support from other people who know the challenges. Like, authors know what it's like to be rejected after rejection after rejection, right? Artists know what it's like to take your piece to a gallery and have the gallery owners be like, we don't think it fits our needs right now. So finding people that have the similar experiences who can tell you how they walked through it or commiserate while you walk through it and then encourage you to get back up and try again or to keep pressing on or to give you like actual like beneficial critical feedback to help you grow is so important. Another thing that I'm a big advocate for, and I talk about a lot, like probably ad nauseum to the people who follow me, is self-care. Self-care is not a cure-all. There is never going to be a world where self-care is the cure-all for everything. That will not happen. However, it can make a huge difference. Practicing good self-care, making it a priority in your life, can be so important. And when we practice good self-care, and I'm talking taking 5 minutes when you are overwhelmed because the kids are screaming and they're fighting over a toy and you got to get dinner on the table and you need 5 minutes to go in your room, shut the door and take a breath, that's great. I mean, all those little tasks that people are trying to tell you are not self-care because they're mandatory, like your hygiene and stuff, that is self-care. If it wasn't, we as therapists wouldn't have this like list of things that we look at. Can my client appropriately do these things for themselves? Can they maintain proper care of themselves given whatever situation they're in? Depression, anxiety, burnout, whatever other mental illness is going on? No, because those are self-care personal tasks that we have to be able to do. And when we're overwhelmed, those things fall to the wayside. So yes, even something as simple as prioritizing your shower, making sure you get your hygiene in, making sure you brush your hair, do your makeup if that's important to you, whatever it is, those are part of self-care. But you also have to prioritize things like taking breaks, exercising, which we recently in my house imposed. This is a whole thing because I was in a funk like the last like few months because I was not doing these things, right? And I told my husband, I said the 2 times in my life that I was at my best, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, I prioritized exercise. Now, for me, that was prioritizing walking, which to some people is like, oh my gosh, exercise, whoa, walking. But when you become chronically ill and you can barely move, walking seems like a feat. But I told my husband, I said, those times in my life, I mean, I wasn't chronically ill at the time. I didn't have fibromyalgia at the time. My migraine condition was still there, but it was under control. I was prioritizing exercise and I was prioritizing my hydration. That never went away, but exercise, I stopped. So I worked it out with my husband to like, what are some days I'm going to make an intentional effort to walk? And if something else comes up, I'm going to find a way to fit it in. You have to prioritize light movement in your day, in your week, because that is imperative to our physical and our emotional well-being. Things like hobbies, meditation, these are also important to center ourselves, to get rid of some of the negative ick that comes around. And I always like to say things that fill your creative well. This is especially true for creatives, but this might be for some moms out there too. To keep creating things, to keep putting content out there, to keep writing, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, I have to be able to fill my creative cup. And for me, that's going to the water. I am a beach girl. I was a California girl. Then I moved to Oklahoma where there are no beaches. And I was like, what is this life? I hate this. And then now I'm back on the West Coast. I am a water girl through and through. Now, I love my family. There are some great things about Oklahoma, but it does not have any kind of really good waterway. There are some rivers that are nice. There's some lakes that are okay, but it is not like the West Coast. And so for me, now that we're back here, prioritizing time by the water has been key. So whatever that is for you, maybe it's time by a fireplace, at a coffee shop, at a state park, going for a hike. Once a week, I try to get out there. We have to prioritize self-care. How this helps burnout a lot. But how this helps imposter syndrome is as we're like doing these things, we can kind of process through some of those things that are going on. And I told you, I talk about it ad nauseum, and so I probably got off track a little bit, but self-care. Another thing we can do, which is another thing I love, is redefining our narrative. When we talk about burnout, it's about to get loud. I'm so sorry. I just saw my husband walk past, which means he and the kids are coming home. But when we redefine our narratives, things start to change, which is so important. And narrative ways of thinking is actually one of my favorite ways of going about things, is changing our definitions of things, changing what it means to be successful, deciding what our idea of success is, and then like holding that, not holding what other people say, redefining what it means to be good at something. So like I was scrolling through Instagram, and it was like a post by a therapist I follow that's talking about building a private practice. And she was like, why didn't my school teach me about CBT? And then cross out CBT and put building up a private practice. And it's so true. Maybe the reason you're feeling imposter syndrome is because you feel like there's a gap in your education. You feel like someone left this important key piece out of how do I do this? Like maybe if you're an artist, you're like, how do I present my art to galleries to get it out there? How do I sell my art online? How do I okay, I've set up a store, but how do I market it? Right? We don't learn these things. We want to focus on creating the art, doing the therapy, doing the coaching, writing the books. We don't want to market them. We don't want to do that piece. And so we feel like there's a gap in our knowledge, and we see someone doing it better, and we feel like we're not supposed to be here. We should have known this already. When in reality, there's just a gap in your education, right? So we redefine that. Like, I wasn't supposed to know this. This isn't naturally what I'm supposed to do. This isn't naturally what's supposed to come to me. So we redefine that narrative, right? We redefine what that means for us so that we can shift into, okay, well, I can learn that piece. If it's something else, if it's like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get this right. I can't draw hands for the life of me. You know what I do for that? I just don't draw hands. I know that sounds silly, but I just don't draw hands. I am an artist, but not a great one. And I don't do it professionally, and I'm not trying to sell my work. And I only use it for certain things, but like, that's my solution. I redefine what it means. Do I need to have hands in all my pictures? No, probably not. But maybe you do. So you find a new way to learn, right? I am not the best at, I write really succinct works. Let's put it that way. And I'm learning how to do better with descriptions and narratives. And when we redefine what it means for success, we can really decide, okay, I'm not going to sacrifice myself just to prove to someone else, or to prove to myself even, that I'm good at this, because I've got all this evidence. And so that's when we pick up our evidence. Okay. So this one is, there's one more after this, but picking up your evidence. What evidence do you have that you belong here, that you belong in this room with everybody else? If you're an artist, what evidence do you have that says, yes, I am an artist, I belong in this room with other artists, and I'm going to keep doing it? If you are a coach, what evidence do you have that says, yes, I belong in this room with all these other coaches who might be making 20 times what I'm making, but I belong here? If you are just setting up your Etsy store and you've never done it before, and you sit down and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got 2 kids screaming in the background, I have no idea what I'm doing. And there's all these Etsy sellers that have a baby on one hip, and they're making dinner, and they're making $5,000 of sales today. I don't know if that's a reality, but that might be what's playing in your head. What evidence do you have that supports you being in this room with those people? We want to look at our evidence, okay? My evidence for this video, I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning of the video, where I was like, I'm using the back camera because it's supposed to look better. I have a microphone that's probably going to, whatever. What is my evidence that I can do this, that I can sit in this room with other content creators and make a podcast, or at the very least make a YouTube channel? What evidence? Well, I've been doing this on social media for a while. Do I have the biggest following? No, but I have people that interact and engage and like what I put out there. Everybody started somewhere, right? I'm not the only one that's going to have a low quality, sound might be a little off video. Everyone that has done this started somewhere. Also, this isn't my first YouTube video. I've done this before. If it's not great, oh well, it's not my first, but it's not gonna be my last, right? Also, I know what I'm talking about. I know imposter syndrome because I've studied it and I've lived it. So I know that what's happening in my brain is not what's reality. Those are my evidence pieces, right? I know what I'm talking about here. And so I know that the content in the video is going to be what I want it to be, even if the quality is seemingly not up to par with what everyone else thinks it should be. The last thing is celebrating your achievements and your strengths. Now, this strengths part goes back to the strengths part goes back to doing what we know, or like, where's our evidence, but also celebrating our accomplishments, celebrating the positive feedback you get, celebrating the, your ability to ask for help when you need it, celebrating your ability to, make a sale when you make a sale, celebrating that deal you made with a gallery, celebrating the day you went through without losing it on your kids, right? Celebrating the fact that your kids still come to you when something's going wrong. Celebrating the fact that you woke up this morning and you're still trying and you're not giving up and you're trying again, right? Taking on that positive feedback is really important too. When your peers are like, yeah, you belong here, you belong in this space, believe them, believe your peers and celebrate that. When your peers say, yeah, you belong here, you belong in this space, even if the greater space is like, we're not sure, your peers, keep them close to you. The ones that say, yeah, you belong in this space with me. We belong here together. And that way, when your friend is having a day where they're like, I don't belong here, I need to not be in the space anymore, I need to quit, you can be like, no, remember you said I belong here, you belong here, we belong here together, right? Find those people, celebrate those wins. As I start to really talk more about these things, about identity and burnout and imposter syndrome and finding our places in this world, I wanted to start with this because this is something that's actually been like pinging in my brain as I've made some steps forward of like where I let myself get into this place of, it was not a great place to be. And I'm supposed to be doing this for a living, and that's who's going to want to listen, right? So as I've been doing that, I've been listening and recognizing that voice of imposter syndrome in me. But then I remind myself, like, you have the education, you have the training, you've walked this, you can walk this with other people. And that is why, I can't just be, quiet and stuff. So when we sit down and we really focus on the evidence, prioritize self-care, we celebrate those wins, we seek support from outside of ourselves, a coach, a counselor, therapist, a wellness professional, whatever, we start to rearrange and get a better view of ourselves and remember who we were, where we started, where we came from, why we're here, things like that. So I want you to know that there is a way out of this. You don't have to just feel like an imposter for the rest of your life, because chances are you're not. You're not an imposter. You're there for a reason. You are in these rooms for a reason. And you are showing up day after day for a reason. And so there is hope to navigate this, to get through this. And you don't have to do it alone. You can find support. You can find others who know what you're going through. You can subscribe to this channel and stick around because there's going to be more stuff like this. Or if you are listening to the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, come back for more. And you can find that person that you wanted to be. You can be that version of yourself that you think is out of reach because you're an imposter. That you're not an imposter and that person's not out of reach. You can get there. So with that, I would love to hear your thoughts down below, either in the comments of the video, or maybe you can reach out on the website soulcadencecoaching.services, and which, if this is a video, will be linked below. I mean, this will be a video. It'll be linked below. But if this becomes a podcast, I'll put it wherever I can put it for podcasts. I think it's in the show notes. And I'll have ways for you to access that. But stick around. We'll talk more. And let me help you cultivate the cadence of your life. Bye, everybody.